Hi all. Sad news for the chess world. One of the greatest uncrowned kings of the game, Viktor Korchnoi, passed away, 85 years old. He died June 6, 2016. So, Viktor Korchnoi, according to ChessGames.com, he was born in Leningrad, USSR. His father taught him chess when he was just 7 years old. He won the Soviet Championship 4 times, 1960, 62, 64, 65 and 1970. He made 8 appearances in the World Championship candidate cycle. He reached the Spassky-Korchnoi candidates final of 1968 but failed to beat Spassky. In the next cycle he won his quarterfinal, the Korchnoi-Geller candidates of 1971, but lost his semi-final match to Petrosian. He made it to the Karpov-Korchnoi candidates final 1974 but lost. He defected from the USSR in 1976. And 2 years later, he finally managed to win the candidates and qualify for the Karpov-Korchnoi World Championship match of 1978. Trailing late with just 2 victories to Karpov's 5, Korchnoi staged a comeback, winning 3 games to level the score 5-all. However, Karpov then won the final game, thereby taking the match and retaining the crown. And he qualified again for the 1981 rematch, but he was beaten 6-2 in that one. In the next candidate cycle, he was beaten by the rising star Kasparov. But he continued to play at a very high level throughout the 80s and 90s and never contended for the world title again. He did, however, capture the 2006 World Seniors Championship, scoring 9 points out of 11. Though never a world champion himself, he defeated 9 players who at some point held the title: Petrosian, Spassky, Karpov, Botvinnik, Smyslov, Tal, Fischer, Kasparov and Carlsen. He also, after defecting, he settled in Switzerland and represented Switzerland at Olympiads and international events, ranked in the top 100 on the FIDE world rating list as late as January 2007, aged 75, the oldest player ever so ranked. He suffered a stroke December 2012, but returned to competitive chess beginning in 2014. So he died in Switzerland, June 6, 2016 at age 85. For the game I'd like to show you today as a tribute to him, I'd like to show you a game from one of the USSR championships which he won in 1962. It was very fiercely contested with Mikhail Tal. So this was a key game between them. Korchnoi with the white pieces kicked off with d4. Tal played one of his favourite openings at the time, the Benoni defence. So we have a Benoni which offers dynamic counterplay for black, but it's lost popularity since, for example, weapons like the Kasparov system with an early f4 and bishop b5 were introduced. It's thought of as a little bit controversial to play, a little bit on the unsound side, not so popular nowadays. But it was one of Tal's main weapons of choice against d4 for some time, around this time in the 60s. So here we have Korchnoi playing the fianchetto variation of g3, bishop g2, castles, castles. Korchnoi often favoured fianchetto lines, for example against the King's Indian defence, and from these sort of positions was able to sometimes get really crushing positions just using the pawn structure from a structural perspective, getting big positional advantages. Now here, after knight a6, h3, trying to extinguish some of black's counterplay and stopping black getting rid of that light square bishop, which might improve black's dark square play a bit. Knight c7. Now here, not too worried actually about b5, plays e4. Black should be worried about e5 here, and plays knight d7, putting a lock for the moment against white playing e5. Rook e1, knight e8. Bishop g5, this is an annoying move. If the queen moves, then bishop e7 is going to be winning the exchange. So it's provoking a concession. If f6, then that's permanently a weakness along the diagonal. So black plays actually bishop f6. The bishop's not so well placed here. It can be a potential target. Bishop drops back here. And yeah, perhaps black could consider bishop d7, but has lost time, and maybe queen d2 and bishop h6. So Tal plays rook b8 here with the idea of b5. That's clamped down on, a6, renewing the idea of b5. That's clamped down on again with bishop f1. So for the moment, black's counterplay is put on hold, and the bishop seems to be slightly unfortunately placed on f6, potentially. Queen e7, now knight d2. The knight coming to c4 is a classic idea, especially against Maloney. It's a well-established idea to push through the pawn structure here. The e5 break is thought of as very thematic. If you can push through e5, you're creating a pass pawn here. You're sometimes getting the e4 square. So this is a thematic break. Knight c7, f4, and it looks as though e5 really is on the cards at some point. But knight c4 is deprived with b5. However, it doesn't matter. Can you see what white plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds here. Okay, e5, yeah, pushing ahead, gets that e4 square, creates this dangerous pass pawn. After d takes, knight d e4 threatens d6, winning material. And white has gained something now. To parry that, we have a concession, losing the dark square bishop, queen d8. So white grabs that dark square bishop, and now d6, a very nice pawn in the center. F takes e5, very aggressive pawn chain here. b4, because if the knight moves, then it gives options for white's knight. So black's trying to discourage that, but knight d5, not minding the exchange of knights. Knight takes d5, and for the moment it looks as though this could be dangerous, this diagonal as well, potentially. We have queen d2. Now, if white has a few moves, what he'd like to do is get rid of this defender of g7. So play a move like bishop c4, take, and try and get in on the dark squares. We have queen d7, which shows that maybe queen c6 at some point is also a concern, though, in this position. We have king h2, b3, rook ac1, offering the a4 pawn. Now things are getting very interesting. So why is Korchnoi giving up on a4? Well, he's gaining a lot of time now. Bishop c4, he wants to eliminate the defender of the dark squares, fundamentally. So bishop c8, now rook f1. Some pressure on black's king side. Rook b4, and now white takes on e6. Bishop takes e6, and bishop h6 introduces also the possibility now, by playing bishop a6, driving away the rook. Queen g5 is now a new possibility there. The queen's not hemmed in as much by its own bishop. Queen g5 to f6, and then we'll be mating on g7. So it looks like a very simple theme here, but it's the implementation which is the tricky bit. As we'll see now, queen g5 does look as though, hang on, isn't this going to be easy? Just mate on g7. Well, Tal's resourceful. He plays rook e4 here. So the white king is going to be dragged into things on any queen f6 in this position. Queen f6 is not possible here. If queen f6, check. Then if king here, then check. And it's end of game for white, or it's not, white's attack is over at least. And the same thing for king h1, there's bishop d5 check. Even worse, actually. That is bad for white. Terrible. So we can't go in for queen f6. So we have rook f2, defending that second rank. And there isn't too much defense to queen f6. This move is virtually forced. f5. To give a second rank defense possibility with queen d7. So we have queen f6, queen d7. And here, again, it looks as though, hang on, this is very, very close to being absolutely decisive. If only the queen wasn't defending the second rank. We have rook takes c5 with the idea of rook c7. But this is defended resourcefully, rook c4. Now, rook takes c4, bishop takes c4. It's up to this rook to try and get to c7. And possibly here, one of the stronger moves might have been rook f3, with the idea of rook c3 and also the option of bishop e3 against queen a7. The queen a7 counter resource is important to factor in this position, because white's king hasn't got that much defense. We see rook d2 here, and now bishop e6, rook d1, and we see this resource now unveiled, queen a7, just tying, it seems tying the rook down because can't allow queen f2. So for the moment, rook d2, queen goes back, probing again, okay, but here a different plan of getting round this queen. Rook d4, so the queen can't take queen g7 mate, but the rook, it seems, can't use c4. So for the moment, white's held at bay, but we want to distract this bishop away from c4. Korchnoi's next move is quite brilliant. Can you see what white plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Okay, it's g4. It's trying to distract the bishop away from c4. So if takes, for example, bishop takes, we can play rook, or even rook takes g4, in fact, to try and distract the queen away from g7. So we have now black trying to generate a passed pawn here on the queen side, trying to use something with his 2-to-1 with a5, waiting around a bit. Now king g3 is played, trying to get the king into safety away from this queen a7. But it's dual purpose, not just getting the king into safety. Maybe this is actually an aggressive king coming up on the dark squares here, because black is not able to do much in this position. If any time queen f7, there's d7 here. So if queen takes, we take the rook. If bishop takes, we just take the queen and take the bishop. So queen f7 is not on the card. So black's really just frozen for a moment, waiting for white. Rook b8. And now the king is improving itself here with king h4. And this is already really dangerous. Even if black tries to get the queens off, king g5 looks very, very strong in this position. This looks absolutely winning, because these two connected passed pawns are going to be crashing through. So that's not an adequate defensive try. We have queen f7, but this king still comes in with king g5. So it's moved to not just being about king safety against queen a7, but really an aggressive king coming in here in spectacular fashion. F takes g4, h takes g4. Black cannot afford this king coming to f6. We have bishop d7. Finally relinquishing actually the c4 square, and that's pounced upon with rook c4. So the queen can't take queen g7. And the rook's coming to that critical c7 square. Tal is forced to try and use his passed pawn potential, a4. But now rook c7. Yeah, this is getting exceptionally dangerous. And it seems to be reaching a climax actually for both sides' plans here. Because now a3, trying to get a passed pawn here. But now what's the point of the rook c7 in this position? Well, can you see what white plays here? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now. Okay, rook takes d7, trying to break down the defenses. Because after queen takes, we have e6. So white's trying to disconnect the queen from defending g7. Also factor in rook b5 check, but here it's king h4, and that king should be safe enough. So we have here queen a7. Not only that, by the way, it would weaken f8. So this is a pointless check, because queen f8 is also then added to black's problems. Okay, so we have queen a7, which introduces queen e3 check as a major threat. So white hasn't got time to disconnect with e7 here because of queen e3. So plays the centralizing move queen e5 first. So white really wants to get in e7 to disconnect the queen from g7. Black now is on the verge of queening after a takes b2, but white now is on the verge of mating with e7 for queen g7, checkmate. So yes, although Tal is queening, his king is on its last legs. After king f7, there's a crushing final blow here, which causes Mikhail Tal to resign. Can you see what white plays? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here. Okay, it's d7. Not the immediate. This takes away d7 from the black's king escape, because if the immediate queen f6, here the king's escaping. So by playing d7, if queen takes, this is much different now, because after queen f6, we have queen f8 checkmate. The king cannot escape to d7. So d7 is absolutely crushing here. Doesn't matter about black queening. There's also e8, of course, in this position now as well to deal with. So it's pretty hopeless if the rook moves or anything. e8 as well is checkmate. So a fantastic and critical game. This is one of the notable games on Korchnoi's Chess Games.com page, and for good reason. It was actually a very important game to win as part of the overall championship. In any case, that the tournament was played in, which was the 1962 USSR Championship. So a fantastic game from a fantastic player, one of arguably the greatest uncrowned kings the game has had, one of the strongest players never to have actually become world chess champion. Okay, rest in peace, Viktor Korchnoi. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.